Now it's time for the Anchormen podcast with Matt Gaetz and Pearson Sharp.
Welcome back to the Anchormen Show. I'm Matt Gaetz, and this is an exciting broadcast of ours because we are adding a new co-host that will break down the news that we've seen throughout the week, all of the opinions and analysis that are part of the coverage every day here at One America News. It has been an incredible year for us. Our distribution has increased. We have had the opportunity to welcome great new talent. Always make sure you check out the Best Darn Sports Show with John Sally here on One America News. And I'm the host of the Matt Gaetz Show. Every weeknight, 9 o'clock Eastern, 6 Pacific. We've got the biggest newsmakers, some of the activists that are driving this movement. And now I get to talk about all of those things in just a moment with our new co-host. But first, I want to let you know that the holidays are here, and it is time to celebrate family, freedom, and all of the blessings we enjoy as Americans. But it's also a time when people are traveling, gathering, and yes, spreading a few germs. That's why I want to tell you about All Family Pharmacy, a company that helps you stay healthy and prepared no matter what comes your way. Just go to allfamilypharmacy.com/Matt. Order online, and a licensed physician will review it. Once approved, your medication ships right to your home. Whether it's ivermectin, antibiotics, vitamins, your everyday maintenance meds, they've got you covered. Fast, private, reliable. Take care of yourself and your family this holiday season and support a pharmacy that believes in service and freedom. Visit allfamilypharmacy.com/Matt. Save 10% with code MATT10 today. And welcome now to the Anchormen platform, my good friend, fellow host here at One America News, Pearson Sharp, host of the Sharp Report, some of the best investigative reporting for years on this network. And Pearson, wow. I want to start with this theme of health and a report you've just had out regarding the vaccines. And here's the thing about vaccines. When I grew up, I would ask my mom, why do I have to go and get stuck with some needle by the doctor? And she would say, well, Matt, the doctor has to put in some of the dead viruses that go around. That way your body can build armies to fight those viruses. And then if you're ever infected by them, those armies will already be built and ready to go. And that made so much sense to me at the time. And now we are seeing so much revealed about the side effects and the consequences, and I can't wait to hear what you've learned.
Well, I mean, yeah, that was the idea back in the day, and I've even had the same thought. That does make sense, but as we're seeing, it doesn't seem to be working, and RFK just came out and said one of his new requirements is he wants to have the flu vaccine manufacturers prove that their vaccine is actually effective. And they are up in arms. They're fighting this tooth and nail. Why? Why would you fight for something that would actually prove your argument if it works? So the big headline this week was that the Vaccine Advisory Panel said that we recommend against requiring all newborns to get the hepatitis B vaccine, which, when you think about it, and their argument was, why are newborn children being forced to get a vaccine that is for a risk that only adults would experience? You know, a sexually transmitted disease. The argument was that mothers who have it might pass it on to their children, which is valid, but the percentage of mothers who have it is extremely low.
Well, isn't there a way to test for that?
There is a way to test for that, so you would know ahead of time. Other first world developed countries like Denmark only require 11 childhood vaccines. The U.S. requires 72, and they have similar rates of hepatitis B. So there's absolutely no sensible logic in requiring a newborn child to get this massive dose of a vaccine as soon as they're born. They don't need it. So, I mean, that was one of the big arguments that came out this week. The other one, they recommended that for parents who do get the hepatitis vaccine for their child, they get something called a serology test. The parents go to the doctor and say, hey, we'd like a serology test, which is, again, kind of a litmus test. It's a marker. It says, does this vaccine actually work? It takes the blood from the baby and looks at it and says, is this vaccine actually protecting against hepatitis B?
Is it building those armies?
Right. So, and the doctors around the country and other doctors on the panel who voted against this said, that's outrageous. We shouldn't be required to do this. Again, why? What is the argument against having to prove that this actually works like you say that it does?
But what do you think that is?
What?
Because I think I know.
What?
I think I know what has driven the
Why they would fight
vaccine
it?
religion in this country.
Well, I think I do too.
Yeah, it is obviously that these pharmaceutical companies want to start making money from your first breath.
Yeah.
And the more they can plow
Yeah.
into you
Absolutely.
before that second birthday, the more they can monetize Americans just existing. And it is crazy to see how many big pharma lobbyists exist for every member of Congress. It is wild on almost any other news network you could turn on to see how many of the ads are big pharma ads. You want to know
Yep.
why you're not going to get the truth about big pharma and vaccines on CNN or Fox News or whatever new name they've given MSNBC
Sponsored by
this
Pfizer.
week. Those messages, those opinions, that analysis is all sponsored by the very industry that now wants to avoid criticism and review. And I'm not a scientist, I'm a lawyer, but I know this: when you're finding the truth, you can't have a predetermined outcome. And
Right.
the outcome they want is to be able to get their drugs into as many people as possible, as fast as possible. And I would just like to go to CVS or Walgreens one time to buy a Diet Dr. Pepper without somebody trying to like push the flu shot or the COVID shot on me.
From the parking lot,
And
they have signs
It's not
walking
that they
in.
care.
No.
It's not that they care. It's that they get a reimbursement from the government if they put that in you. And here's the fundamental question. You know, there's all the data you're getting about the mRNA vaccines, the myocarditis, what we're learning about Hep B. But is the trust just broken? Because I get from a new parent's perspective how challenging it is to weave through all these different studies. And you used to be able to trust that if someone has made the decision that something is on the vaccine schedule, it is probably worth the risk to do it. And now it's been laid bare that it is corrupt, it is financially driven, and the reason you don't know the truth is because they have been hiding the actual data.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the trust is broken, at least for me and my family, and I think for a growing number of Americans. For my second daughter, I saved a mailer that Kaiser sent us. They wanted to give my daughter 38 vaccines in her first year of life. 38. Now, some of those are bundled, like the mRNA and the DTaP, but when you break them down, it's 38 vaccines. Why? Her immune system hasn't even fully formed yet, and you're slamming it with all these new chemicals and toxins, the adjuvants, the aluminum sulfates, all of these things. It's unbelievable what they're putting in this, and you're not allowed to question. You're not allowed to ask questions. And
I'm surprised they haven't tried to kill RFK Jr. at this point. I hate to say it. We're totally against political
might
violence.
have. They
but
might
when you
have.
talk about the amount of profit he has put in jeopardy with some of these
hundreds
reforms,
of billions of dollars, hundreds of billions.
dangerous stuff.
The one of the other big things that came out was an internal memo from the FDA where they quietly acknowledged among themselves that the COVID vaccines had actually killed children. These vaccines killed American children. So far, they've only come out and said that 10 have died. 10 is pretty bad. But the investigator who was looking into this is now confirmed. The investigator was saying that the actual death toll is much higher than that. And the other problem is that they were never able to prove a correlation between the benefit of these vaccines, whether they are worth the risk, because the FDA never asked the drug providers to prove whether these vaccines were worth the risk to healthy children. They never asked them to prove that. They just started handing them out. They said, okay, well, we don't know if this works. We don't know if it's safe, but we're getting a ton of money from the government. So here, go ahead, try it. And our children became the guinea pigs.
It was this great moment of unity, right? I'm always worried when we have too much unity. When we had too much unity after 9/11, we passed the Patriot Act and started invading countries without a legitimate basis. When we had all this unity after COVID, we printed all the money that caused prices to go up for
$5 trillion.
families, and then gave liability protections to vaccine manufacturers and all of this money to essentially perform a test on the American population.
And that is the other thing. Vaccine manufacturers are the only companies in America that you are not allowed to sue if they harm or kill your child.
That was the big Republican ask. So, during COVID, what the Democrats wanted was a ton of money to go awash in the economy. And what Mitch McConnell and the Republicans were arguing for were liability protections for vaccine manufacturers. In this moment of great strife, that's what mattered to them. And they got it.
Yeah, and they got it. It's unbelievable. The last admission that came out was that the CDC finally, I'm sure under massive pressure, admitted that there could be and may be a link between vaccines and autism. And I think that's them trying reluctantly.
That's the big one. By the way,
that's massive.
If you used to say that before,
I know. You're crazy.
You had to go hide under your bed and whisper it with your door locked, or you were deemed a flat Earth conspiracy theorist.
But you have to think about it, because in 1986, I think we had something like 6 childhood vaccines. It was a very low number. And the rate of autism was 1 in 50,000. And now we have 72, and the rate of autism it's like 1 in less than 100, like 1 in 54.
Right, but what the vaccine apologists say is, well, there's better diagnosis right now. There's better tooling to say, okay, this person is on the spectrum. But back in the 80s, you might just have said that kid's a little off, or that person's a little strange.
Yeah, I think that's stretching it. That's absolutely stretching it. We didn't have these issues before. We absolutely did not. I mean, you didn't have all these people. You didn't have all these autistic people. I mean, you absolutely didn't. They're stretching the truth on that one.
All right. Well, I hope people check out the Sharp Report on this. It'll be airing on One American News regularly, and it's going to be very revealing. I do want to get to some political news. We have now seen the announcement of Congresswoman Jasmine Crocket for the United States Senate position in Texas. She's going to run against Ted Cruz for the Senate in Texas. Jasmine Crocket. You have to say she's taken Washington by storm, and hair weave and nail. Yeah, she's been kind of a wild example of excess at times in her legislative and oversight presentations. Do you have a hot take on Crocket for Senate? Because I sure do.
I hope that she runs. I hope that she gets in. That she gets in, but I hope that she goes all the way. I've heard that the Democrats are not that crazy about her running right now, and that they're backing away from her for obvious reasons. But for that reason alone, I hope she runs.
All right, you want to know the truth about
tell
Crocket
me.
for Senate? Crocket for Senate is a total Republican op. It is a brilliant Republican op. Here's why. Okay. In Texas, there was a real concern several elections ago that state could be going blue. The demographics were changing. The margins for Republicans were shrinking year after year. And then something happens in this most recent election with Trump. The Hispanic men in Texas come hard right.
Yeah.
And you start to see those districts along the Rio Grande go from reliably blue to purple to almost reliably red in some cases. And it is zapped Democrats in Texas of their hopes, that major shift. Now, what we saw this last week in these Miami mayoral elections do demonstrate there could be a little softening of the support for Republicans among Hispanics. If you were going to take a maximalist Democrat view on how the midterms are going to go, you would say, well, maybe some of this immigration enforcement has caused some erosion with the Hispanic vote with Republicans. And so if you're the Republicans in Texas, the number one thing you need in a Democrat nominee for Senate is someone who will be repulsive to Hispanic men.
They found her.
I could not think of a better person for this role.
No, that would absolutely do it.
Like there is no group of swing voting Hispanic men that are like, you know what? That's who I want my senator to be.
I mean, yeah, if you wanted to scare people into
Are you
voting.
buying that it's an op? Are you buying that the Republicans are good enough to bait her into this race because she is the worst general election candidate for them in a world in which the Hispanic vote decides the Lone Star
I think that's a great theory. I don't give Republicans any credit today for thinking 2 steps ahead of anything. I'm surprised they get their shoes on in the morning. But it is a great theory, and it will definitely work. That would scare everybody in Texas into voting because she's losing. She's going to lose her congressional seat. Like they're redistricting.
Oh yeah, she's got to give that up. Yeah.
But I mean, they're redistricting that, and she's going to lose it anyway, isn't she?
Yeah, it's a gerrymandered district that won't be anymore.
Yeah. So this is her only option. Now, hopefully, that's what's going to do it. I would love that to be true. I just don't give Republicans any credit.
Well, speaking of which, Susie Wiles, someone I know very well, I give a lot of credit to her. She's the chief of staff. She's the president's chief political advisor. She's saying that the strategy in these midterms is going to be to put Trump on the ballot, to have him campaign. We saw him this week campaigning out in Pennsylvania, out of the Oval Office, not presenting, there with the Rose Garden strategy, but more the rally strategy. Is that the right play, you think, in the midterms, to make it about Trump? Because the way Susie Wiles put it, the traditionally what you try to do in the midterm elections is localize them. If you're the party in power, make it about the road project or water project you brought home. Make it about improving economic conditions for your state or your district. She's saying no. The Democrats are going to make it about Trump. We have to fight fire with fire. We're going to make it about Trump, and it's just going to be a midterm election about Trump. What do you think?
You might need to have both. I can see as a voter where you'd want to know what your representative is going to do about what's happening in your area, but I think the national issues eclipse a lot of what's happening locally, and most of my fears when I go to the voting booth are about what the federal government is doing.
And you live in California.
Yeah.
Which says a lot.
Yeah. And so I think a lot of Republicans today don't have anything if they don't have Trump, which scares me when he's out of office.
Well, yeah, name the singular Republican achievement that emerged organically as someone's priority out of Congress that got done? I mean, what, Thomas Massey getting the Epstein files released, and have they even been released? Like that's the one big, that's just like to me, that's like a big fight about, nothing that's going to impact the price of goods, the price of energy,
daily living,
the things that are going to decide the midterm elections.
So I think rallying around Trump is a good thing. Like we talked about before the show, I think it could come back and hurt them if they pin too much on that. But Trump has unified our country and our party in ways that nobody has in decades, maybe ever. I mean, I can't think of anybody else who has represented a party and an ideology and a movement and a desire, a zeitgeist among the American people like Trump has, for better or for worse. And he's not perfect, but he's brought our country together. And so I think tying yourself to that is what a lot of people want. And for me, like here in California, we have people running, we've had people running in the past for governor, and they try and distance themselves from Trump. The Republicans do. And that's such a turnoff. Like, you need everything that he represents. He represents the best of America.
Well, what about like the mod effort to say, well, I really like
anything
the policies.
No. Anything mod,
but I don't
no.
like his tone.
No.
I don't like.
No.
So
for me, Trump is not extreme enough. I think we need to go more extreme. Like, Trump is here. I want to be over here.
Donald J. Trump is a moderate in the Pearson Sharp movement. To save
we got to
America.
go farther.
But I think that is instructive for some of these candidates, especially coming from someone as smart as Susie Wiles. If you're going to go with that version of, well, I agree with him on some things and disagree with him on other, and I'm going to stand up to him when I need to and support him. If you go with that, it is kryptonite to that low propensity voter who is not dialed in to politics, who's probably not up to date on the changes to the Fed interest rates, but has to believe that Trump is fighting for them and that their member of Congress will fight for Trump.
I think the moderates weren't the ones who elected Trump. He appealed to the base, and the base wants this. They want to go to the wall on this. They don't want a moderate. So I think it could work.
Are you writing the midterms off? Because I might be. And this will, my followers won't like this on the internet. This, the Steve Bannonites, who I love Steve, but they'll say, you fight to the end. Look, I get it. I'm going to be out there campaigning. I'll do everything I can. At the same time, if you see an army that is preparing an onslaught and coming for you,
you don't wait for him to get there.
There's value to digging some trenches in advance.
Yeah.
And if I were the Trump White House right now, I would have some team somewhere preparing for the moment that Hakeem Jeffries becomes the speaker and Jamie Raskin gets an oversight gavel and AOC is firing off subpoenas. And let's hope it doesn't come to that. But if it does, we shouldn't start at that moment saying, okay, well, who's going to be the person most knowledgeable?
You don't
on
want to try and find your underwear in the middle of the night. Like, you want to know what's going on.
And we can do that. And it must be done because it's easy to identify where the Democrats are going to go. They're going to be all about the Abrego Garcia thing. They're obsessed with the MS-13 guy that got sent to El Salvador. They're obsessed with protecting the narco-terrorists in the Gulf of America. They'll want to know all about that. We'll have to relive the Houthi signal group chat. And on those areas where they've already signaled they're going to run plays, let's go start setting up the defense right now.
Yeah,
that's my perspective.
I completely agree. I am with you. I'm not optimistic that we're going to keep the. In fact, optimistic would be a stretch. I don't think we're going to keep it, and hands down.
And why is that?
I mean, the Republicans are useless. They're absolutely useless. They haven't been helping Trump. They haven't been
here's
helping.
What they would say, Pearson. They would say, we passed the reconciliation bill that built the rails for the deportations. We stopped the nationwide injunctions. We held spending at the Biden levels and didn't allow any increase in spending. And, Jim Comey has been arrested. Brennan is referred for prosecution and under review. Tish James got arrested. I mean, there was some action on the weaponization front. That doesn't do it for you? No,
that doesn't do it for me. We've got this NDAA coming up where we're giving more money to Ukraine. What were the other ones on that? It's not heartening to see all the letdowns that we've had. Trump can't get his people in. The Democrats were getting people in left and right when they had power, and the Republicans have just been sitting on their thumbs. I am not impressed with what the Republicans have been doing.
Well, let's talk about that.
And because there is conventional wisdom that the party in the White House loses the House. And that generally seems to be the case. But
if you knew you were going to lose the midterms, think about how you would spend every day that you had the presidency, the House, the Senate, the Supreme Court, all these governor mansions. If you thought you were going to be wiped out in the midterms, you would try to get 16 hours out of every one of these days, moving every priority you possibly could to save the country. And you would be willing to sacrifice the majority, sacrifice your members, make them take tough votes, make them say, this vote might cost you your election, but at the end of the day, we've got it now. We've got a hold of the ball now, and we can get voter ID done nationally or not. This is the chance.
Let's get rid of Obamacare. Why can't we do that?
Get rid of Obamacare. The news this week is that moderates
they've got their own version.
In the House they want a clean extension. Yeah. They're going to work with Democrats on a clean extension.
See, this is what pisses off American voters. This is what pisses me off. This isn't working. This is dysfunctional.
Well, by the way, the people receiving those subsidies would say, well, a bunch of us are Trump voters. And by the way, why are you cutting our subsidies when you're still sending money to Ukraine and people all over the world?
Well, I'd agree with that. Let's stop sending money to Ukraine.
Yeah.
Let's stop doing that.
You would cut a lot of it. Now, you mentioned the frustration President Trump has about his appointees. We got a hot mic moment from the president on that. Let's play it and we'll react after that moment.
I cannot appoint anybody. Huh? I can't appoint anybody. Everybody I've appointed, their time has expired.
All right, Pearson. President Trump reasonably frustrated and upset.
Yeah, absolutely. Senate, Congress, it doesn't matter. The Republicans are not on his side. He's shaking up the establishment, and they don't like that. And of course he's pissed off.
Yeah, there's a specific dispute about blue cards. Are you familiar with this?
No.
So there is a tradition in the Senate that if you are nominated from a particular state, that if the two senators from your state don't agree, then you don't even get a hearing. You don't even get considered. And so the gatekeeper for consideration of confirmation in the Senate, the baseline is that your senators have to be for you. Well, in my case, when I sought confirmation, the first two phone calls I got were Marco Rubio and Rick Scott saying, we're going to go be your greatest champions. But when Alina Habba, an all-around good person who was trying to enforce the law and do the right thing, was told that to even get a hearing in the United States Senate Judiciary Committee, she had to go beg Cory Booker?
Yeah.
What is the point of a majority if we're doing
Trump can't get his appointees. He can't get Alina Habba, but Mamdani can get a convicted criminal to be in charge of his public safety, and no one questions that.
Wait, tell me about this. I haven't been following this.
You're not aware of that. No, so he picked a convicted felon who spent 7 years in jail. He's a
For
rapper.
what did he do?
Armed robbery.
Oh,
And so he
a
picked him.
victimless crime is
a
what you're
victim,
saying?
right? Yeah. So he picked him to be in charge of his public safety council.
No way. An armed robbery guy in charge of the public safety council?
Yeah. It may not be a public safety, but it's in charge of the public safety. So he can get his pick, and no one bats an eye. Like, yeah, great. Let's give this rapper. He served his time. He's a valuable member of our. But we can't get Alina Habba. It's unbelievable. This is a clown show.
Well, and I think Trump is looking at this and saying the Republicans and Democrats aren't even playing the same game by the same rules. Like,
no, we're not.
Do you honestly believe if Kamala Harris had won that election and Democrats had control of the Senate, that they wouldn't fire somebody through without asking Marco Rubio and Rick Scott one
No,
lick?
they would take no prisoners.
They would have done what they were trying to throw us all in jail. They were saying people were domestic terrorists who, had no intention of breaking the law.
Yep.
And so that is Trump's frustration. But you've got Senator Grassley, in his late 80s, leading the Senate Judiciary Committee, and it's maybe why we can't.
We've got a bunch of out-of-touch dinosaurs in charge of this place.
But one place where the rule of law seemingly has collapsed, and all the media's been covering it, we've been covering it a ton on the Matt Gaetz Show, is like Mogadishu West, or as we call it, Minneapolis. These revelations of fraud. Congresswoman Omar talking about the interconnectivity between Somalia and what we're seeing in Minneapolis. What's your read on this? Do you think this is something that we're going to encounter in a lot of U.S. cities, or is it something really unique about how many Somalis were just dumped in Minneapolis in the 90s?
Yeah, it's very strange why they got dumped there specifically. Like, of all the places in the country or the world, just to end up Minnesota, Minneapolis. It's very.
Did Bill Clinton just throw a dart at a map and say,
right?
Was there? I don't believe Minnesota should really be suitable for any humans to have to live. It is so cold and miserable. So I guess as good a place as any. But it is a lesson in the failures of assimilation.
There is no assimilation.
And what I'm trying to figure out with this institutionalized fraud, which is in the
staggering.
billions,
It's the biggest in U.S. history.
are we dealing with neglect and negligence, or are we dealing with a highly sophisticated system of funneling these funds abroad?
I think this is all intentional, and I think it's all intentionally destabilizing. I don't know if necessarily the fraud here exactly is part of this conspiracy, but I think putting the Somalians there, knowing they're a destabilizing factor, this is the result of that. It's all part of that plan. Help bring down the system. And you see it, like you asked if it was just going to be in Minneapolis. We're already seeing it in other places. What was it, Massachusetts? They raised a Somalian flag Vermont, over one of the schools. They raised a Somalian flag. They took down the U.S. flag and raised a Somalian flag in solidarity. And you had, I think it was a congresswoman. It was an elected official, and she was from Somalia, and she said, my job now is to represent Somalia, and I'm going to do everything I can to make sure Somalia is taken care of. What happened to the United States?
Well, those were some of, I think, the comments that aligned with what Congresswoman Omar had said in a different time.
Yeah, exactly. And Omar Fateh.
Omar Fateh was running for mayor of Minneapolis.
And you saw the video where he was waving the Somalian flag, speaking Somalian in his campaign video, and vowing loyalty to Somalia. Like, it's unbelievable. You try to imagine the reaction to this if this happened like 50 years ago, 30 years ago. I mean, even in the 90s, you had people like Bill and Hillary Clinton talking about how we must have assimilation. Chuck Schumer was saying people need to come here and be a part of our country. Like, you shouldn't come here and represent somebody else. And passing these very actually strict deportation laws back in the day. Bill Clinton passed a law. I forget what it was called, but it basically gave the government the ability to, it was called expedited deportations. You could get rid of anybody on any excuse, basically. It was like expedited deportations, exactly what Trump's trying to do. And Clinton passed it. So what we're looking at today is just absolutely astonishing. I don't recognize the country anymore.
Are you satisfied with the deportation agenda and the pace? I mean, it looks like they're moving at as fast a speed as some of these judges will allow.
You know what I'm going to say. Deport them all. I mean, mass deportations every day. We need millions gone. We've got 50, 60 million illegals in this country, far higher than anyone has recognized.
It really has had an impact on housing. I mean,
housing and Medicare costs. The one here in California,
CalMed.
Yeah, CalMed. But that was a story that just came out. Ambulance costs here in California in the last 2 years have gone up 400%. They went from $300 in 2022 to $1,300 in 2024. And what happened? Well, we had 20 million new illegals come into the country.
And that's a version of healthcare that anyone can access. Call 911.
Yeah, and they treat it like an urgent care. They go in for anything, and we have to pay for it.
I think that the self-deportations that we're seeing outside of the mechanized deportations will have the most kind of cultural and societal impact, where people are choosing to go home. And frankly, I hope people make that election, because that's the most humane way to do this. The most humane way is to send people their message on the app that says, you were essentially welcomed into the country by an administration that opened borders. Those aren't the rules anymore. Here's $1,000 to gather your things in an orderly way and return to your home country. I think that is wonderful, and I hope more people take use of it. And you know what? I think the worm is turned, where they're not going to ever be able to go back to the open borders with the excuse that it's just an unsolvable problem. I think that's what's durable about Trump's policies, is that he has stripped the left of ever the ability to just say, well, it can't be done. I'm so excited when we get our Merriweather Farm shipments in. You get a beautiful piece of ribeye. Look at that marbling. Now, I take it out of the package, let it get down to room temperature. All I've got on here is a little salt, a little pepper, and then a little avocado oil. And then I've had my pan preheating with a little oil.
Head to merriweatherfarms.com and enter promo code MattG for 15% off your first order.
Yeah, but it doesn't matter. They don't need an excuse. They never asked us. We never voted for mass migration. They did it anyway. That's what they're doing in Europe. They're destroying our country without asking us once what we want. It doesn't matter. So they can give whatever excuse they want, and they get away with it because the media backs them up.
Europe has struggled from these war migrants. I mean, we talk a lot about these Middle East policies that cause violence and cause war, that are perpetrated in different places and that arise in different places. I'm very interested in your perspective on what's going on in Syria right now, because you've been to the country. You have reported on the conditions for a lot of the religious minorities and Christians there. Now we've got this new president who seems to be celebrated in the Arab world. But what are you able to tell us about kind of the conditions in Syria right now?
They're horrific. They're absolutely horrific, and it's not getting covered. And you have, shockingly, I do not understand it. You have the same media organizations and the same world leaders who were condemning Bashar al-Assad for attacking his civilians, praising the new leader, Jelani, for being this scion of peace and democracy and ushering in a new era for Syria. And he's a savage. He's a barbarian. He's ISIS. He is the face of ISIS. He fought for Al-Qaeda, for al-Nusra. He's the worst person in the world who could be leading a country. And he's slaughtering thousands, tens of thousands of Christians, of Alawites, of minorities. The atrocities that are happening under him. The people that I've spoken to who have fled Syria, people who are still in touch, Syrians who are still in touch with their families there, send me videos that turn your guts. It's awful. And somehow he's being accepted as this righteous, upstanding leader. And we're welcoming him in the Western world. I do not understand it.
Israel is launching attacks in Syria. They've got troops that are there in the Golan area. Is Israel righteous in attacking their neighbor Syria, given the conditions that you've just laid out?
I think Israel has its own agenda for that, specifically in the Golan Heights. They certainly don't want to have such a destabilizing influence right on their border. But I don't think what they're doing is for humanitarian purposes.
What do you think it's for?
One, their own security. I don't think they care that much about what's happening in Syria, humanitarian-wise. Two, there's resources I think they're fighting for. I think they'd love to have some territory in Syria, in addition to the Golan Heights. There's also a sect of, a religious sect, and I forget the name of them now.
The Druze.
Yeah, I think it's the Druze, who are in some of the areas in Syria that they're defending. And so that's one other reason, because there's a lot of Druze in Israel.
Yeah, it's an important constituency, no doubt. Jelani does seem to have control of the country. That was always an open question with Assad, particularly there at the end. Do you think he lasts?
That's a great question.
Well,
I understand he's being propped up.
The Saudis love him, don't they?
They do.
Why is that? They really love him. I mean, MBS really pushed for the sanctions relief on Syria and on a lot of the recognition of Jelani.
Yeah. He's an extremist, and a lot of the Saudis hold extremist views, even if they have learned to work with Western governments. I don't think he can last because he's so oppressive, but there may be external forces that enable him to continue ruling. And I pray, and I think all Christians should be praying right now for the people who are stuck there, suffering under him right now.
What about this theory? ISIS won.
They did. That's not a theory.
Won.
They did.
Yeah, there's this theory that what ISIS is some little batch of fighters in the Mesopotamian river that we've got to track down. Actually, what ISIS is Jelani. And actually what they were trying to do was create a caliphate. And actually, if the reporting that you're sharing continues to bear out, that's exactly what they're doing. And so what ISIS wanted, a place where they could control with a radical Islamofascist in control of it, where minorities were executed. It's hard to tell the difference between Syria today and what ISIS was trying to build.
No, absolutely. That's not a theory. That's reality. You nailed it.
And when you look at some of the concerning connections between Saudi Arabia and ISIS on the funding front, and then you start to look, because I think that a lot of Saudis, maybe not the government of Saudi Arabia, but a lot of rich Saudis thought, well, you know what? You see these Iranian Shia militias that rip across Syria and occupy territory and feed cash back when they seize oil wells and resources. Maybe we need some Sunni
they're ideologically aligned
forces that do the same.
Yeah. Saudi Arabia has been propping up indoctrinating madrasas all over the world, over the last couple of decades. I think they're not going to be that upset to have an extremist government running that.
They also do the stuff with Live Golf, and they also have these commercial enterprises.
I think it's Western outreach.
I wonder how compatible all of that is long term. Right? Wouldn't we want a world in which every country resisted their worst impulses and embraced a future that was more modern and not like tribal executionist? I think that would be probably a good thing. And Saudi Arabia, I think, still has that choice before them.
Yeah, they do. I'm not sure what the question was with that, though. I agree. That would be great. I don't know
the question
if it's
is, do you
compatible.
think the die is cast as to Saudi Arabia, or do you think they are in a time of evolution that is reflected by, on one hand, entering all these Western markets and sports and entertainment and content, and then on the other side, backing Jelani in Syria?
The problem, Matt, is that it's their religion. And it's not just like a philosophy. It's not like democracy. Like, it's their core belief, and it drives everything that they do.
I don't accept the proposition that the Islamic faith at its core is conducive to the type of violence that we've seen in ISIS and the worst terrorists. I know plenty of people who are practicing Muslims who are peaceful, wonderful, outstanding people, just like some of the worst representations of Christianity don't reflect the views of all Christians.
Yeah, but there's no Christians around the world right now who run a government that beheads people or that stones people to death.
We've had our days when we have.
Islam.
But there are plenty of countries run by people who are of the Islamic faith that don't do that are perfectly fine countries that in some cases may have quality of life for their citizens better than in the United States.
Like Singapore.
Singapore's has some of the highest income that that you
but I
could
mean,
imagine.
if you
high quality of life, low crime.
if you spit on the street, you get stoned. I mean, it's like they have
Some
horrible
people like
laws.
that.
I mean, yeah, but that's not realistic for like Charlie Kirk said, and like I've said, Islam is not compatible with Western civilization. Full
Political
stop.
Islam. You
Period.
don't think people?
It's a theocracy.
Well, not
It's a theocracy.
not in every instance. There are people who practice Islam who don't fuse it with their politics. I think
So why don't you have these moderate Islamists coming out against all this extremism? You don't.
they often do.
I don't see that happening.
You don't see in the Islamic world people condemn Hamas. I saw every major country after October 7th condemn Hamas.
It seems like everything that they do is either remain silent about these kinds of things or tacitly support what's happening, support this kind of extremism.
I have a different view of it. I think that you are seeing a rise of a lot of these Middle Eastern markets in Riyadh and Doha, Abu Dhabi, Dubai, Muscat, Oman, and they want to sit at the big boy table. They, in terms of capital markets, they are the big boy table, and it is a time when they're having to reconcile at times like violent tribal warring pasts with their desire to have access to different asset classes that you can find in the Arabian deserts.
For the purpose of the billions that are at stake negotiating with Western governments, I think they are able to tamp down some of their wilder impulses.
Let's hope we all can.
Well, but it's for the money. It's not because they believe it's right. And one of the funny stories I saw was that there was some, I'm not a sports guy, there was some major sporting event. Maybe it's the Olympics that was going to be held, Winter Olympics in Seattle or something. And there were two, the theme of it was pride. It was going to be a pride event. And there are two Muslim nations who have to go there and play at that event. And they were throwing holy hell because it's a pride event. And they objected to that. And I don't know why.
You would too.
Well, I absolutely would. But I don't know why you don't see the mainstream media holding them to task on this. It's like when Pride Month happens every year.
Oh no, they were when the World Cup was in Qatar, like the mainstream media was obsessed about whether or not they were going to enforce their anti-homosexuality laws on people.
They seem to get a free pass on this. I never see it in the media about like
no, they were criticized roundly for it.
Like all these companies, BMW and JetBlue and Boeing and stuff, they all change their logos during Pride Month. They never do in the Middle East, and they don't get called out for that.
Well, to me, that's not the Middle East fault. It's maybe ours.
Well, I agree. No, I'm not calling out them, but I'm just saying like they don't. What they represent does not represent us, and it's not compatible. That's the bottom line.
Yeah, I don't think it's compatible from a governance standpoint, but I don't think
or a life standpoint. Would
it really bother you if your neighbors were of the Islamic faith?
Yes. Yeah.
That wouldn't bother me at all.
Yeah.
I don't think you can make judgments about entire groups
because
of
I
people
don't trust them. Are you secretly jihadists? I mean,
that's like saying if someone is worships like when the FBI was saying traditional Catholics, well, maybe they're all like in the Klan. It is crazy and false and wrong judgments to draw about groups of people based on some of the behavior of their worst members.
I will say that my wife's family is from Lebanon, and there was one instance where I believe it was members of Hamas were going door to door, rounding up Christians to kill them. And their neighbors, my wife's parents' neighbors, were Muslim. And they came over and told her dad to hide, to get out of there because they were coming.
Well, I'm sure
so
glad your in-laws didn't have the same view of their Muslim neighbors that you would.
I mean, you can't just go to war with the people living next to you. You have to make it work with your neighbors. But at the same time, Muslims have absolutely devastated Lebanon. They've destroyed the country. The Christians are fleeing. They're doing the same thing in Syria. And so, no, I don't trust that Islam represents anything we can live with.
All right. Final thing I want to talk to you about. We got these negotiations going on right now to end the war and it seems as though between Russia and Ukraine, and it seems as though Zelenskyy is saying that his line in the sand is any territorial recognition of gains by Russia. Now, you and I have talked about this a lot, and we knew it would come to this point where Zelenskyy would have to be revealed as somebody standing in the way of any sort of peace. And it seems President Trump is getting that. He was very critical of Zelenskyy in his comments this week. You follow this closely. You've been to the Donbas region where this war was being fought. You've met with the people fighting this war. What chapter do you think we're in right now?
We're in the final phase before Zelenskyy takes the fall, because I think he is going to be the fall guy in this situation. I think he has been held up as this champion for so long, and now he's in a place where he's going to be blamed for everything. And there's so much corruption that he's involved with inextricably that there's no one else who could have approved, or there's no way he could have not known what was happening.
Well, they'll
and
all
so
turn
I
on
think,
him, right?
Of course, and I think that's what's going to happen. And so I think this is the last period before that happens, and he takes the fall for everything, and someone else replaces him, and then we have peace. So I don't know what the timeline is for that, and it may not happen exactly that way.
But is that why he's standing in the way of any sort of agreement? Because he knows he's in the last act of this for his presidency?
I think he still has delusions of grandeur.
Oh.
I still think he thinks he's in charge, and he's not, and he never has been. And so what he's doing right now is just showboating because he thinks he can hold it together. To his credit, I think he does understand that any leader of Ukraine who accepts a deal where you give up territory is just, they're going to crucify you. So he doesn't want to accept that. He doesn't want to be the person who carves up Ukraine and accepts that deal, but he's going to have to be.
Well, let me offer this pushback. And you know, I'm no fan of U.S. involvement in this war, voted against it every opportunity I had. I think Putin overplayed his hand in Alaska. If you look at recent public opinion data, NATO's never been more popular than it is right now. Now, I don't have a very favorable view of the excesses of NATO and the way that it's operated. But when Putin went to Alaska and didn't really offer anything, didn't really bring anything to the table, didn't emerge with a ceasefire or anything like that, I think a lot of Americans just thought, you know what, this guy is overplaying his hand, and we're in this cycle of Trump being annoyed with Putin for a while, then annoyed with Zelenskyy for a while. And who wins the war may ultimately be who wins the cyclical nature of those interactions of President Trump.
I think Trump and Putin, and we've talked about this, I think Trump and Putin came to an agreement in Alaska, and I think they had a very good understanding of how things were going to play out. And I think things are playing out according to their plan. I'm not a big believer in conspiracy like 5D chess and thinking 20 steps ahead that everybody gives our leaders credit for, but I think that they laid it out, and Trump knows Zelensky's nobody. He knows he's not in charge or calling the shots. It's Putin and Trump who are going to decide the peace deal, and I think they came to an agreement. And the problem, like we've discussed, is that they couldn't just turn off the war in one day. I think that they have to go through maybe not an act, but I think there's a series of steps that have to be followed because there's people like Lindsey Graham who want to keep this going at all costs.
Then tell us, Pearson, what's the next step in the dance with Trump and Putin to end the war?
I think we're seeing it right now, and I think it's the corruption against Zelenskyy. I think all these investigations are setting up for him to fall, for him to be taken out of power, and that's going to be the justification, because we've known about these things for years. This isn't a secret. You know, he's been buying up mansions, and he was in it was the Panama Papers, and there was one after that. What was after the Panama Papers?
Yeah, I know there've been a few
he was
reveals.
mentioned in that as having a bunch of offshore property and not declaring it when he became president in 2019. And there's just been a bunch of scandals involving him, and for some reason the media has given him a free pass. Well, now, again, for some reason, those same scandals are coming back to haunt him.
And by the way, the media loves nothing more than destroying a hero they've built, right? They build Zelenskyy up, and the media giveth. And
feed him to the sharks.
The media will take him away. Well, Pearson, thank you for spending the hour chatting with me about these things going on in our politics in the world. I look forward to 2026. It's been an incredible year here at One America News in 2025. I know 2026 will be even better. We're going to have excellent guests join us. We're going to have a great time on the Anchorman platform, and there'll be more to come in the coming weeks. Thank you all so much. Give us a 5-star rating, leave a review, indicate what you'd like to hear Pearson and I chat about, and we'll be with you next week for Anchormen. Don't go anywhere.
Want to see more great videos like this? Click on the link below to subscribe to OAN Live and watch Dan Ball's Real America and The Matt Gaetz Show on Dish Channel 212. Tune in, subscribe, and watch today.